Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this episode of School Business Tech. Today, actually, we're joined on LinkedIn Live. Yes, we've made the numbers. We've got to sign off from LinkedIn, so we're going out live streaming on LinkedIn Live, which is very exciting. And also exciting is David Pott from School Analytics, who's joining me today. So why is David here? Well, schools generate data every second, and this can be from simple human keystrokes to the constant API syncs between multiple systems. And you know how I love integrations. Well, while schools are using all this data and they value it, only 41% of teachers feel their school is collecting more data than they are basically regularly able to make use of. In this episode, I'm going to be talking with David, who's been developing and reporting dashboards for Sims.net using Power BI. These insightful displays simplify the reporting of large volumes of data so schools and trusts can visualize the information a lot clearer. But is this enough to inspire the other small number of teachers who feel their schools should be collecting more data to do more? David has worked with technology in schools since the early 1990s, initially as a Sims expert and lately as a Power BI consultant. Over the past few years, he has worked with schools and MATs, both primary and secondary sector, delivering Power BI analysis reports. David believes, like me, that Power BI is revolutionizing the way that schools and MATs can analyze their data. And for the first time, schools can have access to rich, deep, and timely analysis of data that really matters to their pupils. Good afternoon, David. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, Ryan. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, and I totally tracked you down. I was like, I saw some of your Power BI dashboards that you put on LinkedIn, and I tracked you down. And I'm definitely, this is a fanboy moment of you, and it's great. Thank you very much for coming on board, because we both really share a bit of a passion for data. We both really share a bit of a passion for improving school business technology and the reporting of all that data. So just for this afternoon's audience, can you briefly explain what Power BI is?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, Power BI started off from Microsoft Excel, and it was kind of extended really for data analysis purposes. So Microsoft Excel was deemed as being a little bit restrictive for data analysis, and Power BI was a product that Microsoft created to fill a gap. The initial reasoning behind Power BI was to create something that required no previous experience, so that anybody who wanted to join, who wanted to create their own analysis, would not necessarily need to have programming experience. Power BI itself is an amazing piece of software. It's able to pull information from almost anything in almost any format. So imagine having an Excel spreadsheet where you could pull data from, yes, other Excel spreadsheets, but also text files, a DFE web page, your pupil database, be it Sims or be it Bromcom or be it Arbor. It links with so many other different types of file and system that it can pull data from almost anywhere. Even, for example, a PDF file. We can pull data from a table on a PDF file.
And that's amazing, right? Because before it was, you could only get it in Excel. You then run the kind of chart wizard who would then spit it out. I remember the chart wizard, right? And now it's like, well, I've got my data in this, might be in a SQL database. I've got some in Excel. I've got some in another database in a platform. It's got an API, and you can start sucking in all this stuff, right? And then it just, like you said, it's beautiful. Like it's really easy to pick up and build these amazing kind of looking dashboards.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't need to be a specialist programmer to understand Power BI. Granted, it helps, and Power BI's got a lot of depth to it. So you can start off on a really shallow learning curve where it's all nice and straightforward. And if you can understand an Excel formula or something like that, you can do maybe 80% of what you want to do in Power BI. But for those people who really want to get into it, there's a huge amount of depth to it. It's not just used, for example, in the education arena. It's used internationally across lots of different industries. So there's a huge user base, and there's a huge help base, therefore, if you like, of people who are out there who can help schools develop their Power BI resources.
So we've talked about Power BI, and we've talked about obviously the benefits of the accessing data, and it's relatively easy. But can you tell me a bit more? Why should education schools, primary and secondary MATs, really start to embrace dashboards themselves?
I think a well-designed dashboard can help help answer various different questions. It can explain the starting points for pupils. So we know that we have to monitor EAL pupil premium, SEN pupils, and so on. But it can explain their starting points in more different ways than we used to. It can provide answers. So it can tell you that last week the percentage attendance for this school was such and such a percent. But it can also put that raw figure into context. So we can much more easily find the context of that percentage attendance figure in terms of, well, how many of those were, say, COVID absences, or how many of those were special need pupils absent, or whatever it might be. So it provides, yes, answers, but also gives us some context to those answers as well.
And I think that's really important these days, isn't it? Because especially around education, it can be really emotive. People can be really excited about these things, or they can see a scenario, but that doesn't necessarily depict the whole school or the whole trust. And that contextualization helps for making better decisions, longer term. You're not kind of anxiety or emotion isn't driving. Yeah.
I think one of the things about Power BI that I enjoy is the fact that, yes, it can give you the big whole trust or whole school view, and it can do that very quickly, bringing data from all these different data points. But we can also drill down and drill through each data point so that very quickly we can get a list of pupils who we can make an intervention with. And I think that's always the test of a good analysis system, whether it's written in Power BI or whether it's written in something else, is how quickly can I get a named list of pupils, potentially with photographs on there, with some context around those names that suggests perhaps to two educational professionals in the room what they can do next with that pupil. And I think that's the ultimate test. And I think Power BI passes that test because it does allow us to do things like that.
So what you're saying is you can have this overarching kind of dashboard, but then drill down into relevant details until literally you get the next level down and the next level down, and that might actually be, as you said, in this context of this kind of descriptor, that actually might be a pupil, or a list of pupils, which then inform the action. But I suppose from the decision maker or the planner or the strategist kind of point of view, you've got all this context that you're working through when you get this list that allows you to rationalize and make the best decision based on the peripheral information of the situation.
Yeah, and it's fast. We're not waiting for hours or minutes while we watch the wheel of death turn around on there. Certainly, if we use the Power BI service, which is the online bit of Power BI, it's fast because we're using all of Microsoft's infrastructure and all of Microsoft's file servers there. So it's fast. You can go from trust with multiple schools all aggregated together to those individual schools, to a key stage, to a year group, to a class, to a pupil, really with 4 or 5 clicks and in as many seconds. So it's really fast when you get your reports up and running.
And I suppose when you get the integrations as well, one of the things is you're getting real-time data. So you're talking about speed, but how are people currently getting their information in school? Is somebody processing that? Are they writing up a report? How long does it take them to produce that report? It could be a day, it could be a week, but you are then behind the decision-making curve, aren't you? And you're trying to catch up on that. Whereas if you get real-time data, you can catch this information straight away.
Yeah, and I think attendance is one of the good examples of that. I think with almost any pupil database, be it SIMS or be it one of the other big players, it was always quite difficult to work out what's our percentage attendance today? What was it yesterday? What is it this week? What was it last month? Things like that. But with Power BI, I'm not saying it's a trivial thing to do, but it's meat and drink for Power BI to analyze those kind of figures. And for the first time, you can see the figures like that almost in real time. So if necessary, we could be looking at attendance in real time. Certainly, what was our attendance this morning is a question that we can ask of a Power BI system.
So can you tell me, you've been working on these Power BI dashboards. I know you've been working with lots of schools and trusts, but what are some of the best insights that you've been able to generate using Power BI?
I mean, coming back to attendance, I did a report for a couple of schools where we wanted to find out which pupils were responsible for most absence in that school. So we did a table, top 10 most absent pupils. And we were able to order that table. So it was initially this year, but we were also able to say, well, let's drill into it a little bit further. Who were the top 10 most absent pupils in term 1, in term 2, and in term 3? And of course, we found some pupils who were very absent in one term, but not absent in the other terms. But by looking for the pupils who were absent consistently in all 3 terms, or months or weeks or whatever it was, we could identify the pupils who we could go and find out a little bit more about and say, well, why is this pupil off? He's in the top 10 every term or every week or every month. Why is that? And go and find out about that. And of course, by fixing, if you like, their attendance, you've gone a long way to improving your percentage attendance as a school, because these are the pupils who are causing most absences. So, that was a good one. Yeah,
and I think just to emphasize that point, especially with schools, and I know intervention work is massive at the moment. Some local authorities, there's just no option for exclusion. You kind of want to get in there early as possible if there is a trend that you're going to see. And you're right, having the visualization of data is really helpful, especially if it's real time. That you're, like you said, you can start to look at trends, you can do comparative analysis, you can do benchmarking, you can then drill down into it, get your individuals, pupils, staff, whatever that data drill down will be, and then it's positive action forward in context, with a clear action plan. So I'm absolutely a believer of Power BI. I can't tell you how much, and there's so much data in schools as well, isn't there? There's just insane amounts of stuff going into MIS platforms and all sorts.
There is. I was going to take you up on something you said at the start there, talking about the load on teachers, and something like Power BI comes along, and of course, we've all experienced before, we expect somebody somewhere to be typing in more data. But I think if we use Power BI correctly, it should mean less data input by teachers, because we're making better use of the data that we've already got in the system. Schools are awash with data. There's data everywhere in school, but we don't do enough with it. And I think Power BI should actually reduce the burdens, the workload burdens placed on teachers, and hopefully take a little bit of that responsibility off a teacher, so they're less responsible for tapping data in, and perhaps more responsible for getting really pertinent reports about their class or individual pupils instead. So I think that's definitely how Power BI can help.
Brilliant. So final question for today, David, if I may, and I ask this to all my guests, but what are your predictions for school business technology over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, looking at my area, which is data analysis, I think one of the things I'm particularly interested in is the use of AI to help sort of inform school decisions. I'm not convinced it's there yet. Power BI itself has got some AI functions in there which are improving, and Microsoft is improving all the time. But I'm not convinced it's quite there yet. But there's a possibility there of things like, for example, anomaly detection, where we could have a look at your percentage attendance figure as a school, and the AI system itself automatically looks at factors that have made that percentage attendance higher or lower than perhaps you would expect. And it will be coming up with reasons why your percentage attendance has dipped or risen suddenly or whatever. And it'll be anticipating those reasons and telling us what they are in advance. Also, things like sentiment analysis. Again, working with data with schools for a long time, I'm very conscious that things like behavior systems develop a long list of free text comments that staff type in about the behaviour of individual pupils. Almost impossible to analyse that in anything. But with AI, sentiment analysis means that the AI system can analyse what members of staff have written and perhaps come up with some insights based on those sentiments that are in there. So
that's really interesting. Weirdly, I have actually seen sentiment analysis. So the Enterprise team, who they do digital marketing for schools, and they use a platform that now can do. They launched it last year. Sentiment analysis. It will literally, their platform will read any social posts or any information that's out there about your organizational brand out there, and it will give you a kind of gauged report of where they think people are in relation to your brand or your organization or your school. And, you know, it's really insightful, because I think there's a big element of confirmation bias that happens. You know, you're really passionate about your organization, and therefore you believe everyone else is passionate. But so you naturally look for the comments that show you're passionate, you know, that other people share that. But actually, this is where, again, dashboard reporting gives you that contextualization. It frames it out, and you know, really just kind of goes, is everybody feeling what you're feeling? You know?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'd add to that list is the ability perhaps to write English sentences and request a graph or an analysis in an English sentence. Press enter and have Power BI actually come up with that. Again, it's kind of there. You can do it. Power BI has it. I'm not sure it's perfect yet, but that's one of the things I'm looking out for, because I think that would be a nice thing to have into the future.
Amazing. Right, David, thank you so much. Thank you absolutely so much for coming and joining us. Ever insightful. For those of you that really enjoyed the session with David today, check him out on LinkedIn. Go and check him out on Twitter. If you haven't already, go and check out the School Business Tech channel. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all our future episodes. And all that leaves me to do is say, have a wonderful afternoon, David. Thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you. Nice to be here.